Detective Mike Sullivan had seen plenty of traumatized children in his 15 years with the Denver Police Department, but 3-year-old Emma Rodriguez was unlike any witness he'd ever encountered. She sat in the corner of the Child Advocacy Center's playroom, her tiny frame dwarfed by an oversized armchair, clutching a worn teddy bear with one missing eye. Her dark curls framed a face that should have been filled with the carefree joy of childhood, but instead held the haunted expression of someone who had witnessed unspeakable horror. 3 weeks had passed since the brutal attack that had shattered the Rodriguez family's quiet life in the Highlands neighborhood. Emma's grandmother, Rosa Rodriguez, lay in a medically induced coma at Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital, her skull fractured, her ribs broken, fighting for every breath through a ventilator. The doctors weren't optimistic about her chances of survival, and even if she did wake up, they warned that brain damage was likely. Emma's parents, Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez and Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, were both deployed with the Army's 10th Mountain Division somewhere in Eastern Europe. The military had granted them emergency leave, but logistical complications and security clearances meant they wouldn't arrive in Denver for at least another week. In the meantime, Emma had been placed in the temporary care of her aunt, Carmen Santos, a single mother of 2 who was struggling to understand why her normally chatty niece had suddenly stopped speaking entirely. The crime scene had been a nightmare that still haunted Sullivan's dreams. When officers responded to the 911 call from a concerned neighbor who heard screaming, they found Rosa's modest ranch home ransacked from top to bottom. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out and their contents scattered, family photographs torn from their frames and strewn across the hardwood floors. Rosa was discovered unconscious in the kitchen, a pool of blood surrounding her gray head. Her walking cane, a gift from her late husband lying broken beside her, clearly used as a weapon against her. But it was the discovery of Emma that truly broke Sullivan's heart. Officers found her hiding in the narrow space beneath the kitchen sink, wedged behind cleaning supplies, her small body trembling uncontrollably. She was physically unharmed, but the terror in her eyes suggested she had witnessed every moment of the savage attack on her beloved grandmother. From that moment forward, Emma hadn't spoken a single word. Child Protective Services had assigned Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a renowned trauma specialist, to work with Emma. Dr. Martinez had dealt with countless cases of childhood trauma, from abuse victims to survivors of violent crimes, but Emma's complete withdrawal into silence was particularly challenging. Selective mutism following trauma is not uncommon in children this young, she explained to Sullivan during one of their regular consultations. Emma's mind is protecting itself the only way it knows how, by shutting down the part of her that might have to relive or describe what she saw. The investigation had reached a frustrating standstill. The crime scene yielded few useful clues. No fingerprints that didn't belong to the family. No DNA evidence. No witnesses except for a 3-year-old who couldn't or wouldn't speak. The items stolen from the house were puzzling in their specificity. While valuable electronics and jewelry were left untouched, the intruder had taken seemingly random personal items, family photographs, Rosa's daily medication, and most mysteriously, Emma's favorite pink blanket with unicorns on it, the one she had slept with every night since she was 6 months old. Neighbors had provided the only lead, and it was frustratingly vague. Mrs. Ethel Patterson, who lived next door and kept a vigilant watch on the neighborhood from her front window, reported seeing an unfamiliar man with a large dog walking past Rosa's house several times in the week leading up to the attack. She described him as Hispanic, medium height, wearing work clothes, but admitted her eyesight wasn't what it used to be, and she couldn't provide more specific details. Security cameras in the area had proven equally unhelpful. The Highlands neighborhood was an older, established community where many residents valued privacy over surveillance. Only 2 houses on the entire block had security systems, and both cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned on the morning of the attack. A coincidence. That made Sullivan's detective instincts scream that this was more than a random break-in. Every attempt to communicate with Emma had failed spectacularly. Social workers, child psychologists, even a therapy dog specialist had tried various approaches. Emma would sit quietly, sometimes playing with toys or coloring in books, but she remained locked in her silent world. She would nod or shake her head in response to yes or no questions, but even that communication was inconsistent. Most disturbing of all, whenever anyone mentioned her grandmother or asked about that day, Emma would curl into a ball and cover her ears, rocking back and forth until the questions stopped. The pressure was mounting from all sides. Sullivan's captain, a gruff veteran named Tom Morrison, was fielding calls from the media, the mayor's office, and increasingly frustrated family members. "We need answers, Sullivan," Morrison had growled during their morning briefing. "An elderly woman is dying in the hospital. A child is traumatized, and we've got nothing. The community is scared, and rightfully so. If this animal is willing to beat an 82-year-old woman nearly to death while her granddaughter watches, what's he going to do next?" As Sullivan sat across from Emma in the playroom, watching her arrange plastic blocks into precise patterns only, she understood. He felt the weight of the case pressing down on him. This little girl held the key to solving not just a brutal assault, but potentially preventing future attacks. Somewhere in her traumatized mind was the face of a monster who needed to be brought to justice. He leaned forward slightly, careful not to invade her space, and spoke in the gentlest voice he could manage. "Emma, sweetheart, I know you're scared. I know something really bad happened to Abuela Rosa, but she needs our help, and you're the only one who can help her. When you're ready, whenever you're ready, I'll be here to listen." Emma looked up at him with those enormous brown eyes, clutching her teddy bear tighter, and for just a moment, Sullivan thought he saw a flicker of something: recognition, maybe even trust. But then she looked away, returning to her blocks, and the moment was gone. Time was running out, and Sullivan knew it. Rosa Rodriguez was fading fast, and with each passing day, Emma's memories might fade too. He needed a breakthrough, and he needed it soon. Detective Mike Sullivan stood in his cramped office at 3:47 a.m. The fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across crime scene photographs that covered every inch of his desk. Empty coffee cups formed a small mountain beside his computer, evidence of another sleepless night spent chasing ghosts and dead-end leads. The Rosa Rodriguez case had consumed him for 3 weeks, eating away at his sanity like acid on metal. He'd worked hundreds of cases in his career, but something about this one, maybe it was Emma's haunted eyes or Rosa's peaceful face on life, support, had gotten under his skin in a way that wouldn't let go. The crime scene photos told a story of calculated violence that made Sullivan's blood run cold. Rosa's modest living room, once filled with family memories and religious artifacts, had been systematically destroyed. But it wasn't random destruction there. Was a method to the madness that suggested the perpetrator knew exactly what he was looking for. Family photographs had been specifically targeted, many torn from their frames with surgical precision. The contents of Rosa's purse had been methodically sorted through, her prescription medications missing, while cash and credit cards remained untouched. Sullivan picked up the photograph that bothered him most. Rosa's bedroom where her jewelry box had been opened, but expensive pieces left behind. Instead, the thief had taken only costume jewelry pieces that held sentimental rather than monetary value. A necklace Rosa wore in her wedding photo was gone, along with a bracelet that had belonged to Emma's late grandfather. It was as if the intruder knew the family history, understood which items would cause the most emotional pain. His partner, Detective Lisa Chun, had been working the case from a different angle, focusing on forensics and witness interviews. Chun was methodical where Sullivan was intuitive, logical where he was emotional, a perfect complement that had made them one of the department's most successful teams. She'd spent days canvassing the neighborhood, re-interviewing witnesses, checking and rechecking every detail. The mysterious man with the large dog remained their only solid lead, but Mrs. Patterson's description was frustratingly vague. Hispanic male, maybe 5'8", 5'9", Sullivan muttered, reading Chun's notes for the 100th time. Work clothes, possibly landscaping or construction. Large dog, possibly German Shepherd mix. Seen in the area multiple times before. The attack. It described half the working men in Denver's Hispanic community. Without Emma's testimony, they were shooting in the dark. The door to Sullivan's office burst open with enough force to rattle the frosted glass panel. Chun stood in the doorway, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled, her dark hair escaping from its ponytail. But her eyes blazed with the kind of excitement that comes with a major breakthrough. "Mike, we've got another incident," she announced. Breathlessly, still catching her breath from running up 2 flights of stairs. Same neighborhood, same MO, but this time our victim survived, and she's talking. Sullivan was already reaching for his jacket before Chun finished speaking. When? Where? How bad is she hurt? Eleanor Thompson, 79 years old, lives on Maple Street, just 4 blocks from Rose's house, Chun explained as they hurried toward the elevator. Attack happened around 2 a.m. last night. Neighbors heard screaming and called 911. Paramedics found her conscious, but severely beaten. Broken jaw, concussion, multiple contusions. She's at Presbyterian St. Joseph now, same hospital as Rosa. The irony wasn't lost on Sullivan, both victims in the same hospital, possibly sharing the same hallway, attacked by what was almost certainly the same perpetrator. As they drove through Denver's empty pre-dawn streets, Chen filled him in on the preliminary details. Eleanor Thompson was a retired schoolteacher who lived alone in a small bungalow she'd owned for 47 years. Like Rosa, she was a pillar of her community, known for her volunteer work with local charities and her immaculate garden that neighbors often stopped to admire. Same as the Rodriguez attack, Chun continued, consulting her notepad in the dashboard light. House ransacked, but specific items taken rather than obvious valuables. Television, computer, expensive artwork all left untouched. But family. Photos were torn up, prescription medication stolen, and here's the kicker: her late husband's reading glasses were taken from his bedside table. She's kept them there for 15 years since he died. Never moved them. Sullivan felt his stomach tighten. The emotional targeting was becoming a clear pattern. This wasn't about money or drugs. This was about inflicting maximum psychological damage on elderly women who lived alone. But why? What connected Rosa Rodriguez and Eleanor Thompson beyond their age and vulnerability? Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital's intensive care unit hummed with quiet activity, even in the early morning hours. Eleanor Thompson lay propped up in bed, her face a canvas of purple and yellow bruises, her jaw wired shut, but her eyes alert and determined. Unlike Rosa, who remained unconscious and fighting for her life just 3 rooms down the hall, Eleanor was very much aware and eager to help catch her attacker. Dr. Patricia Williams, the attending physician, briefed the detectives before they entered Eleanor's room. She's stable, but in significant pain. The jaw fracture will require surgery later today, but she insisted on talking to you first. I've given her a mild sedative for the pain, so she might be a bit fuzzy on some details, but her memory of the attack itself is remarkably clear. Eleanor Thompson proved to be the witness they desperately needed. Despite her injuries and the trauma of the attack, she possessed the sharp mind of a woman who had spent 30 years managing classrooms full of teenagers. Through written notes and careful nodding, she provided details that made Sullivan's pulse quicken with the first real hope he'd felt in weeks. The attacker was indeed Hispanic, approximately 35 years old, with a distinctive L-shaped scar across his left cheek that looked like an old knife wound. He'd spoken to Eleanor in Spanish during the attack, calling her abuela in a mocking tone that suggested familiarity with the local community. Most importantly, he brought a dog with him, a large German Shepherd mix that had been trained to intimidate, growling and showing its teeth while the man ransacked her home. The dog didn't attack, Eleanor wrote in shaky handwriting. Just stood there, watching, like it had done this before. The man kept saying things in Spanish I didn't understand, but he seemed angry about something specific. Not just robbing me like I had done something to him personally. As Sullivan read Eleanor's account, pieces of a larger puzzle began forming in his mind. This wasn't random violence. It was personal, targeted, and escalating. The perpetrator knew his victims, understood their routines, and was methodically destroying the things they held most dear. But what connected an elderly Mexican-American grandmother and a retired Anglo schoolteacher? What had made them targets for such calculated cruelty? Most importantly, if Emma had witnessed the same man and his dog attacking her grandmother, she was the only person who could positively identify him. The weight of the case now rested entirely on a traumatized 3-year-old's ability to overcome her fear and find her voice again. The antiseptic smell of Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital had become as familiar to Detective Sullivan as his own aftershave. For the past week, he'd made daily pilgrimages between Eleanor Thompson's room on the 4th floor and Rosa Rodriguez's ICU unit on the 6th, hoping one of them might provide the final piece of the puzzle that would crack this case wide open. Rosa remained unresponsive, her condition deteriorating despite the medical team's best efforts, while Eleanor had become an unexpected ally in their investigation. Despite her wired jaw and the constellation of bruises that painted her face in shades of purple and yellow, Eleanor Thompson possessed the kind of sharp intelligence that had made her a legendary high school English teacher for 3 decades. She had filled 17 pages of a legal pad with meticulous handwriting, documenting every detail she could remember about her attacker and the methodical way he had destroyed her home. He knew where I kept things, Eleanor had written during their morning interview. My medicine cabinet, my jewelry box, even my husband's old desk in the spare bedroom. He went straight to specific locations, like he'd been there before or had detailed instructions. Sullivan studied Eleanor's notes while Sean worked her laptop, cross-referencing addresses, service records, and employment databases. They had set up a temporary command center in the hospital's family waiting room, much to the chagrin of the nursing staff, but Dr. Williams had given them permission after Eleanor specifically requested their presence nearby. Listen to this, Eleanor continued writing, her pen moving steadily across the yellow paper. He kept talking about debts and payment, said I owed him for something that happened a long time ago. But I've never seen this man before in my life. The scar on his face, that's not something you forget. The scar had become their most promising lead. Chun had contacted the Denver Health Medical Center, the county jail's medical facility, and 3 urgent care clinics in the area, hoping to find treatment records for a Hispanic male with an L-shaped facial scar. It was tedious work, complicated by privacy laws and understaffed medical records departments, but it was the kind of methodical investigation that sometimes produced breakthroughs. Sullivan's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Dr. Rebecca Martinez, Emma's trauma specialist. Detective, I think you need to get over here immediately, she said without preamble. Emma had what I can only describe as a breakthrough this morning, but it's raised some very disturbing questions. 20 minutes later, Sullivan and Chun sat in Dr. Martinez's office at the Child Advocacy Center, watching a video recording of Emma's morning therapy session. On the screen, the 3-year-old sat at a small table surrounded by dozens of toy figures, people, animals, vehicles, and buildings. For the first time since the attack, Emma was actively engaging with the toys instead of simply staring into space. Watch what she does with the dog figures, Dr. Martinez instructed, fast-forwarding to a specific section of the recording. On screen, Emma carefully selected a large brown dog figure and placed it next to a male figure wearing work clothes. She then surrounded them with multiple female figures, all lying on their sides. With methodical precision, it was chilling. To watch, Emma moved the man and dog from figure to figure, knocking each one down and taking small objects from miniature houses. How many times has she done this sequence? Chun asked, leaning forward intently. 17 times in the past. Hour, Dr. Martinez replied. Always the same pattern. Man with dog, multiple victims, taking specific items. But here's what concerns me most. She advanced the video to show Emma selecting additional figures, small ones, that clearly represented children. She's not just recreating what happened to her grandmother. She's showing us something much larger. Sullivan felt ice water running through his veins as he watched Emma place child figures in houses, then show the man and dog approaching each location. The little girl's play therapy was revealing the terrifying scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just 2 random attacks. It was part of a systematic campaign of violence that potentially included multiple victims they hadn't discovered yet. Has she indicated how many locations? Sullivan asked, his voice tight with controlled urgency. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. 5 houses so far, Detective. Emma keeps going back to 5 specific locations, and in 3 of them, she places child figures. She paused the video on a frame, showing Emma's careful arrangement. I think she witnessed more than just her grandmother's attack. I think she saw this man planning or discussing other targets. The implications hit Sullivan like a physical blow. If Emma had overheard the attacker discussing other victims, it meant he wasn't working alone, or he was systematic enough to case multiple targets in advance. Either scenario suggested a level of organization that transformed this from opportunistic crime to something far more sinister. Chun was already on her phone, calling the precinct to request additional units for welfare checks on elderly residents in the Highlands neighborhood. If Emma's play therapy was accurate, they potentially had 3 more victims out there, some possibly still alive and in immediate danger. There's something else, Dr. Martinez continued, restarting the video. Emma has been talking to the toys, whispering to them in both English and Spanish. Yesterday, she made the man figure say, "Mia vin conmigo," little girl comes with me. Combined with her placement of child figures in the houses, I believe she overheard this perpetrator planning to abduct children as well as assault elderly victims. Sullivan's blood pressure spiked as the full horror of the situation became clear. They weren't just hunting a burglar who had escalated to violence. They were tracking a predator who was systematically targeting vulnerable community members with the ultimate goal of kidnapping children. Emma hadn't just witnessed her grandmother's attack. She had inadvertently overheard the planning stages of a much larger operation. We need to get this information to every school, daycare, and community center in a 10-mile radius, Chun said, already pulling up contact lists on her phone. If this guy is planning to snatch kids, we need to flood the zone with warnings and extra security. Dr. Martinez held up her hand. There's one more thing you need to see. She advanced the video to its final sequence, where Emma carefully placed the brown dog figure next to a building that looked like it was meant to represent a school or large institutional building. She keeps putting the dog here, at what appears to be a school. And she makes this sound. The audio picked up Emma making a low, continuous growling noise while moving the dog figure around the building. She's telling us where he's going, To strike next, Sullivan realized, his detective instincts crystallizing the scattered pieces into a terrifying picture. He's not done. The elderly victims were practice, reconnaissance, or fundraising. His real target is children, and Emma knows exactly where he's planning to find them. As Sullivan and Chun raced back to their car, both officers understood that the case had fundamentally changed. They were no longer investigating past crimes. They were racing against time to prevent a mass tragedy that a traumatized 3-year-old had somehow predicted through her silent observations and toy-based testimony. The Denver County Courthouse stood like a fortress of justice against the crisp Colorado morning sky, its neoclassical columns casting long shadows across the plaza where Detective Sullivan paced nervously, checking his watch for the 3rd time. In 5 minutes, Dr. Rebecca Martinez had insisted that sometimes a change of environment could trigger breakthroughs in traumatized children, and the courthouse represented the ultimate symbol of safety and order, everything that had been shattered. In Emma's young world, this is either going to work brilliantly or traumatize her even more, Sullivan muttered to Chun, who was reviewing security protocols with the courthouse staff. They had arranged for Emma to visit during off hours, when the building would be quieter and less overwhelming for a 3-year-old who hadn't spoken in nearly a month. Emma arrived holding her Aunt Carmen's hand, clutching the replacement teddy bear that social services had provided after her original one had been lost in the chaos of the investigation. She looked impossibly small in the courthouse's vast marble lobby, her dark eyes taking in the imposing architecture with the same cautious wariness she had shown everywhere since the attack. Dr. Martinez knelt down to Emma's level, speaking in the gentle, patient tone she had perfected over years of working with traumatized children. Emma, sweetheart, this is a very special place where people help keep everyone safe. Detective Sullivan wants to show you around, and maybe we can talk about what happened to Abuela Rosa. Would that be okay? Emma's response was the same as always, a slight nod, followed by that heartbreaking retreat into her internal world, where no adults could reach her. But Dr. Martinez had noticed something different this morning. Emma had been more alert during their car ride, actually looking out the window instead of staring at her lap, showing the first signs of emerging from her trauma-induced cocoon. As they walked through the courthouse's security checkpoint, the metal detector's beeping seemed unnaturally loud in the marble-walled space. Emma flinched at the sound, but didn't cover her ears or curl into a ball as she had been doing for weeks. Sullivan interpreted this as progress, tiny, fragile progress, but movement in the right direction nonetheless. Emma, this is where Judge Williams works, Dr. Martinez explained as they entered the main courtroom. She's a very nice lady who helps make sure bad people can't hurt anyone else. Would you like to sit in her special chair? For the first time since the attack, Emma showed genuine interest in something. She looked up at the imposing judge's bench, then back at Dr. Martinez with what might have been curiosity. Carmen lifted Emma up to sit in the leather chair, and, for a moment, the little girl almost smiled, the first expression of anything other than fear or withdrawal that any of them had witnessed. It was then that Officer Daniel Rodriguez appeared at the courtroom's entrance with Rex, the courthouse's bomb detection German Shepherd. Rex was a magnificent animal, his black and tan coat gleaming with health, his intelligent eyes alert but gentle. Officer Rodriguez had worked with Dr. Martinez before on cases involving children, and Rex had been specifically chosen for his calm temperament and ability to interact safely with young victims. Emma, I'd like you to meet my partner. Rex, Officer Rodriguez said softly, keeping Rex on a short leash near the doorway. He helps us keep everyone safe here in the courthouse. He's a very good dog. The transformation in Emma was immediate and shocking. The moment her eyes focused on Rex, her entire body went rigid. The teddy bear slipped from her suddenly nerveless. fingers, and fell to the courtroom floor with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Her face, which had shown the first hint of life in weeks, went chalk white. Her small hands gripped the arms of the judge's chair, so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Dr. Martinez moved toward Emma, but before she could speak, the little girl did something that sent shockwaves through everyone present. She lifted a trembling finger, pointed directly at Rex, and broke her month-long silence with two crystal-clear words that rang through the courtroom like a bell. "Scary man." The adults froze, hardly daring to breathe. Emma wasn't done. As if a dam had burst inside her, the words began tumbling out in a mixture of English and Spanish, her voice growing stronger and more urgent with each sentence. "Scary man hurt Abuela Rosa. Big doggy watch. Man say she, Mia, no cry. Take Rosa's necklace. Take my blankie." Emma's voice rose to a near shout as weeks of suppressed terror finally found its outlet. "Man say he come back for Emma. Take Emma to new house. Doggy help him take Niñas." Carmen Santos gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dr. Martinez was frantically taking notes, trying to capture every word of Emma's explosive testimony. Sullivan felt his heart pounding as he realized they were witnessing not just Emma's recovery, but potentially the break in the case they desperately needed. But Emma wasn't finished. Still pointing at Rex, though her voice was becoming calmer as she saw that this dog wasn't attacking anyone, she continued with details that made Sullivan's blood run cold. "Man have hurt face," she said, touching her own left cheek. "Like this. Big hurt." He show Emma picture of other Niñas. Say Emma going to play with them. Say doggy protect Emma from bad people. But man is bad people. Officer Rodriguez, understanding that Rex was triggering traumatic memories, but also serving as a crucial catalyst for Emma's testimony, carefully moved the dog further back while keeping him visible. "Emma, you're being very brave. Can you tell? Use more about this scary man. What did he look like?" Emma's description was remarkably detailed for a 3-year-old. The man was not tall like Daddy, had work hands dirty, and spoke Spanish, like Abuela Rosa, but angry. Most critically, she described his distinctive scar with an accuracy that matched Eleanor Thompson's description perfectly. "He take pictures of Emma with phone," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried clearly through the courtroom's acoustics. "Say Emma pretty niña, and have fun at new house. Show Emma other girls on phone girls, crying in room with no windows." Dr. Martinez felt sick as she realized the full implications of Emma's testimony. The little girl hadn't just witnessed a burglary gone violent. She had been shown evidence of other kidnapped children, had been photographed for what appeared to be trafficking purposes, and had been specifically targeted for abduction. Sullivan's phone was already in his hand, calling for an immediate Amber Alert and mobilization of every available resource. Emma's breakthrough had revealed that they weren't just hunting an escalating criminal, they were racing against time to stop an organized child trafficking operation that had already claimed other victims. As Emma continued talking, describing details about a big white van and a house with bars on windows where the sad girls live, Sullivan realized that this brave little girl's recovery had just transformed their investigation from a local assault case into a federal manhunt that could potentially rescue multiple kidnapped children. The scary man Emma had identified was no longer just Rosa Rodriguez's attacker. He was a predator with a network, resources, and most terrifyingly, other victims who were still out there waiting to be saved. Within minutes of Emma's explosive testimony, the Denver County Courthouse had transformed into a command center for what was now being treated as a federal child trafficking investigation. FBI Special Agent Maria Santos arrived with a tactical team, her stern expression softening only when she knelt down to Emma's eye level and spoke to her in gentle Spanish, establishing an immediate connection that made the traumatized child feel safer. "Mia, you are very brave," Agent Santos whispered to Emma, who had been moved to a smaller, more comfortable conference room designed for sensitive interviews. "Your words are going to help us save other little girls. Can you help us a little more?" Emma nodded solemnly, still clutching her replacement teddy bear, but speaking with a clarity that astonished everyone present. Dr. Martinez had explained that traumatic breakthroughs in children often resulted in remarkably detailed recall, the mind releasing information it had been protecting itself from processing. "The scary man, he showed Emma his phone many times," Emma began, her voice steady, but her eyes distant as she accessed memories that had been locked away. Pictures of girls in small room. Girls sad, crying. Some girls Emma's size, some bigger like cousin Sophia. Agent Santos exchanged meaningful glances with Sullivan. Sophia. Santos was Carmen's 12-year-old daughter Emma's cousin. If the trafficking network was targeting children across a wide age range, it suggested a sophisticated operation with multiple buyers and purposes. "Emma, when the scary man showed you these pictures, did he say where the girls were?" Dr. Martinez asked gently, using techniques specifically designed to help children recall spatial information. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, accessing memory in the way children often did, through visualization rather than linear narrative. He say the girls live in special house. House with windows that have metal lines." She drew crossing patterns in the air with her small finger. "Like jail windows in TV shows Tio Miguel watch." Carmen gasped softly. Miguel Santos was her brother-in-law, a corrections officer who often worked overtime shifts. If Emma was referencing jail windows, she was describing bars reinforced security that suggested a sophisticated holding facility. "The man showed you where this house was?" Agent Santos pressed gently. "On phone, like map," Emma exclaimed, becoming animated as she remembered details. He pointed phone, say, "Emma going to new house with friends." Show Emma picture of house big, white house with red roof. Trees all around, like forest, and big fence with sharp things on top. Agent Santos was hurriedly taking notes, already coordinating with her technical team to begin searching property records and satellite imagery for white houses with red roofs in heavily wooded areas within a reasonable driving distance of Denver. The description of razor wire suggested rural property, possibly an abandoned facility or compound, specifically modified for trafficking operations. But Emma wasn't finished with her revelations. As she became more comfortable with the questioning process, details continued flowing out in a stream that painted an increasingly horrifying picture of the operation that had targeted her family. "The scary man, he not work alone," Emma continued, her voice dropping to a whisper as she shared what was clearly the most frightening information. "He have phone calls with other scary men. Emma hear them talk Spanish talk about bringing more girls, about buyers coming from far away, about making lots of money with pretty niñas." Sullivan felt his stomach drop as the implications became clear. This wasn't just one predator. They were dealing with an organized trafficking ring with buyers, suggesting interstate or even international connections. The complexity of the operation explained why the initial attacks on Rosa and Eleanor had been so methodical and professional. "Emma, when you heard these phone calls, did the men say any names?" Agent Santos asked, knowing that even partial names could provide crucial leads for federal databases. Emma nodded eagerly, proud that she could remember important details. "Scary man with hurt face, other man call him Carlos, and Carlos call other man Jefe, like boss man." Agent Santos immediately activated her communication device, relaying the name Carlos and the Spanish designation Jefe to FBI databases for cross-referencing with known trafficking suspects. The fact that Emma had overheard organizational hierarchy suggested she had witnessed more than just planning. She had been present during actual, operational discussions. Dr. Martinez gently guided Emma to continue sharing, recognizing that the child was in a unique psychological state where traumatic memories were accessible but not overwhelming. Emma, did Carlos show you anything else on his phone? Any other pictures? Emma's expression darkened, and she hugged her teddy bear tighter. He showed Emma a picture of van. Big white van with no windows in back. He say van coming to get Emma soon. Take Emma to play with other girls. But girls in pictures not playing girls. Scared, crying. The room fell silent as everyone present processed the horrifying reality. Emma had been shown the actual vehicle that would be used for her abduction. She had been psychologically prepared for her own kidnapping, shown images of previous victims, and given false reassurances about playing with other girls who were clearly distressed captives. Emma, Agent Santos said very carefully, did Carlos tell you when this van was coming? Did he say specific days or times? Emma's answer sent chills through everyone in the room. He say van coming after Abuela Rosa go to heaven. He say Rosa, old and sick, won't fight anymore after he hurt her. Then Emma have no protection. Van can come get Emma easy. The calculated cruelty was breathtaking. Carlos hadn't just attacked Rosa in a moment of opportunity. He had specifically targeted her as a means of isolating Emma for abduction. The assault on an elderly woman hadn't been random violence. It had been the first phase of a kidnapping plan that required removing Emma's primary caregiver and protector. Agent Santos was already coordinating with tactical teams and local law enforcement for immediate protection of Emma and her extended family. If Carlos had been planning Emma's abduction for after Rosa's death, Rosa's current critical condition in the hospital might accelerate his timeline. There's something else, Emma said quietly, seeming to understand the gravity of what she was sharing. Carlos, he take picture of Emma's school. He know what time Emma go to school, what door Emma use. He show Emma pictures of other kids from Emma's class. The final revelation hit like a physical blow. Carlos hadn't just been planning to abduct Emma, he had been surveilling her school and potentially targeting other children from her classroom. What they were dealing with wasn't just a trafficking ring focused on one victim, but a systematic operation that had infiltrated the entire community. As federal agents mobilized for what was now a massive multi-agency operation, Emma's courage in speaking up had revealed a trafficking network that threatened dozens of children and had already claimed unknown numbers of victims. The race was no longer just to catch one predator. It was to dismantle an entire organization before they could execute their plans for mass abduction from Emma's elementary school. The FBI's Denver field office had never seen mobilization on this scale. Within 2 hours of Emma's testimony, Agent Santos had coordinated with Homeland Security, the U.S. Marshal Service, and local law enforcement across 3 states to launch Operation Safe Harbor, a massive manhunt for what intelligence analysts now classified as a Tier 1 trafficking organization. Emma's detailed descriptions had provided more actionable intelligence than most federal investigations gathered in months. Agent Santos stood before a wall-sized digital map displaying real-time search results as her technical team fed Emma's descriptions into advanced geographic analysis software. White House, red roof, heavily wooded area, razor wire perimeter, within 2 hours driving distance of Denver, she announced to the assembled task force. Satellite imagery has identified 47 properties matching these basic parameters. Detective Sullivan found himself relegated to advisory status as federal agencies took operational control, but his intimate knowledge of the case made him invaluable to the investigation. He studied the satellite images with the intensity of a man whose career had been defined by attention to detail. Eliminate anything built after 2020, he suggested. Carlos demonstrated extensive knowledge of the Rodriguez family's routines, suggesting he's been operating in this area for years. He wouldn't have invested in new construction. The technical team rapidly filtered the results, reducing the list to 31 properties. Dr. Martinez, still coordinating Emma's ongoing interviews, provided additional crucial details that further narrowed their search parameters. Emma had mentioned hearing water sounds during the phone calls and seeing mountains in phone pictures. Cross-referencing properties near water sources with clear mountain views reduced their target list to 12 locations. Meanwhile, Agent Santos' partner, Special Agent David Chun, was coordinating with the D and ICE to track financial records associated with the name Carlos and known trafficking organizations. We've got hits on 3 individuals named Carlos with trafficking-related arrests in the past 5 years, he reported. Carlos Eduardo Mendez, 34, arrested in 2019 for human trafficking, but charges were dropped due to witness intimidation. Carlos Miguel Santos, 28, currently wanted on federal trafficking charges out of El Paso, and Carlos Antonio Rivera, 36, suspected of running trafficking operations between Mexico and Colorado. Agent Santos felt her pulse quicken. Pull everything on Mendez if charges were dropped due to witness intimidation. It suggests he's sophisticated enough to silence victims. That matches the psychological profile Emma described. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria Gonzalez, a clerk at a rural hardware store 40 miles northwest of Denver, called the FBI hotline after seeing Carlos Mendez's photograph on the evening news. He was in here 3 weeks ago, buying heavy-duty locks and security cameras, she reported. Paid cash, drove a white panel van, had a big German shepherd with him. Real unfriendly dog. What creeped me out was he bought children's furniture. 2 beds, toys, stuff like that. Said he was setting up a daycare, but something felt wrong about it. Gonzalez provided the crucial piece of information that solidified their target. Mendez had asked for directions to the old Riverside Youth Camp, an abandoned facility that had closed in 2018 due to financial difficulties. The camp was located in a heavily forested area near Clear Creek, with mountain views and existing security infrastructure that could easily be modified for trafficking operations. Agent Santos immediately deployed tactical teams toward the Riverside Youth Camp while coordinating with the Colorado State Patrol to establish roadblocks on all access routes. Aerial surveillance confirmed that the abandoned camp matched Emma's descriptions perfectly. A large white building with red roofing, surrounded by dense forest, with newly installed razor wire along the perimeter fence. But as surveillance teams established positions around the compound, they discovered the horrifying extent of Carlos's operation. Thermal imaging revealed at least 8 heat signatures in what appeared to be the camp's former dormitory building, consistent with multiple victims being held captive. Vehicle movement patterns suggested regular traffic to and from the location, indicating an active trafficking hub rather than just a holding facility. We've got confirmation of the white panel van Emma described, reported the tactical commander, via encrypted radio. Parked behind the main building, along with 2 other vehicles, a black SUV and a pickup truck. This suggests multiple perpetrators on site. Agent Santos made the critical decision to coordinate simultaneous raids rather than risk a prolonged siege that might endanger the captive children. Federal tactical teams would assault the main compound while local law enforcement secured potential escape routes and secondary locations. The operation required perfect timing. Any delay could result in the execution of hostages or the destruction of evidence that might lead to other trafficking cells. As teams moved into position under cover of darkness, Dr. Martinez remained, with Emma at a secure federal facility, continuing to extract additional details that might prove crucial during the assault. Emma had remembered hearing Carlos mention buyers coming Thursday. And since today was Wednesday, time was running out before additional children might be transported away from the facility. "Emma, you've been so brave," Dr. Martinez whispered, as tactical teams reported ready status. "The scary man can never hurt you or any other children again. The police are going to make sure of that." But Emma's response sent a chill through everyone monitoring the communication. "Dr. Martinez, the scary man, he say he have friends everywhere. Police friends, judge friends, people who help him when trouble comes. He say no one can stop him because he knows secrets about important people." Agent Santos realized with growing dread that they might be dealing with a trafficking organization that had infiltrated law enforcement and judicial systems. If Carlos had protection from corrupt officials, the rescue operation could be walking into a trap. Emergency protocols were activated to ensure operational security, with information restricted to only the most trusted federal agents. As tactical teams prepared for the final assault on what intelligence now confirmed was a major trafficking hub, they understood that success would depend not just on rescuing the children currently held captive, but on dismantling a corruption network that had enabled these crimes to continue for years. The operation that had begun with Emma's courage in pointing at a police dog had evolved into the largest federal trafficking bust in Colorado's history, with implications that would reach far beyond a single predator's crimes. At 3:47 a.m., the Colorado wilderness surrounding the abandoned Riverside Youth Camp erupted into controlled chaos as federal tactical teams initiated Operation Safe Harbor. Agent Santos crouched behind an armored vehicle, her radio crackling with position reports as teams moved through the dense forest like shadows, their night vision equipment turning the darkness into a green-tinted battlefield where children's lives hung in the balance. "Alpha team in position at the north perimeter," came the whispered report. "Confirming razor wire has been recently installed. Multiple motion sensors visible. This location is heavily fortified. Bravo team approaching the main dormitory building. Thermal imaging shows 8 distinct heat signatures in what appears to be a locked room on the second floor. Signatures are small, consistent with children aged approximately 4 to 12. Agent Santos felt her chest tighten as the reality of Emma's testimony was confirmed in real time. 8 children trapped in a locked room, potentially including some who had been missing for months or even years. The weight of their rescue operation pressed down on her as she coordinated the complex assault from the mobile command center. But as teams moved closer to the compound, the situation began deteriorating rapidly. Motion sensors triggered floodlights that suddenly bathed the forest in harsh white light, and the distinct sound of barking dogs echoed through the trees. Carlos Mendez hadn't just fortified his operation. He had prepared for exactly this scenario. "Command, we've got a problem," reported the Alpha Team leader. "Multiple vehicles are fleeing the rear of the compound. Looks like they had advance. Warning, we were coming." Agent Santos's worst fears were confirmed. Someone with access to federal communications had tipped off the trafficking network. The corruption Emma had mentioned wasn't just theoretical. It was actively compromising their rescue operation. Emergency protocols were immediately implemented, switching to encrypted channels and restricting information to only the tactical teams already in position. Through the chaos of barking dogs and shouted commands in Spanish, surveillance teams reported that Carlos Mendez himself had not fled with the other vehicles. Thermal imaging showed him moving through the main building, apparently attempting to reach the locked room where the children were being held. The implications were terrifying. If cornered, would he harm the victims rather than allow them to be rescued? "All teams, this is command," Agent Santos broadcast on the secure channel. "Primary suspect is moving toward the victim location. We need immediate breach on the main building before he reaches those children. Authorization granted for dynamic entry." The tactical team's explosive breach of the main building's entrance sent echoes through the mountain valley like thunder. Within seconds, agents were pouring into the former youth camp's corridors, their movements precise and coordinated, despite the building's maze-like layout of dormitories, common areas, and administrative offices. Detective Sullivan, monitoring from the command center, despite being officially relegated to observer status, recognized a pattern in the building's layout from his study of the facility's original blueprints. Santos, there's a service staircase. On the east side, if Mendez knows the building layout, he'll use that to avoid your primary teams and reach the children first. Agent Santos immediately dispatched her reserve team toward the service staircase, but radio reports indicated they were already too late. Carlos Mendez had reached the second floor and was attempting to break down the reinforced door that held the captive children. The sound of terrified crying could be heard through the tactical teams, radio communications as children realized something was happening outside their prison. "Please, please don't hurt us," came a young voice through the door, captured on the tactical team's audio equipment. "We've been good. We didn't try to run away." The heartbreaking plea galvanized every agent in the operation. These weren't just statistics or case files. They were real children who had been living in terror, begging for mercy from adults who saw them only as commodities to be bought and sold. As the tactical team reached the second floor, they encountered Carlos Mendez in the hallway outside the locked room. But he wasn't alone. Bruno, his German shepherd, stood protectively beside him, hackles raised and teeth bared. In Mendez's hand was a key ring, and his other hand held something that made every agent's blood freeze, a small detonator device. "One more step and everyone in this building dies," Mendez shouted in accented English, his distinctive L-shaped scar clearly visible under the building's emergency lighting. "You think you're saving these kids? I'll kill them all before I let them talk." The tactical team immediately halted, recognizing the explosive device as genuine. Bomb disposal experts had noted suspicious modifications to the building's electrical system during their approach, suggesting that Mendez had wired the facility for destruction if his operation was ever compromised. Agent Santos arrived on the scene moments later, drawing on her extensive training in hostage negotiation. Through the locked door, she could hear at least 8 children whimpering in fear, the same children Emma had described seeing in photographs, the victims whose rescue had driven this entire operation. "Carlos, I know why you're doing this," Agent Santos said calmly, keeping her weapon lowered but ready. "The debts, the pressure from your bosses, the fear of what happens if you get caught. But killing these children won't solve any of your problems." Mendez's response revealed the depth of his desperation and the sophistication of the organization behind him. "You don't understand anything. These aren't just kids. They're worth millions to the right buyers. I kill them, I'm dead. I let them go, I'm dead. At least this way, I take some federals with me." Through her earpiece, Agent Santos heard Dr. Martinez's voice from the command center. "He's not going to surrender. Everything in his psychological profile suggests he'll follow through on the threat rather than face federal trafficking charges. The children are in immediate danger." As tactical teams positioned themselves for what appeared to be an inevitable confrontation with a cornered predator willing to commit mass murder rather than face justice, Agent Santos realized that Emma's courage in speaking up had led them to this moment, 8 children's lives hanging in the balance, their rescue dependent on stopping a man who had already demonstrated his willingness to destroy innocent lives to protect his criminal empire. The standoff had reached its most critical point, with seconds potentially determining whether the brave little girl's testimony would result in salvation or tragedy for the victims whose voices she had become. The standoff lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, an eternity measured in heartbeats and held breath. Agent Santos maintained eye contact with Carlos Mendez, while tactical teams positioned themselves with surgical precision, knowing that a single wrong move could result in the deaths of 8 innocent children and multiple federal agents. But the breakthrough came from the most unexpected source imaginable. Through the building's damaged sound system, a small, clear voice suddenly echoed through the corridors. "Carlos, you lied to Emma. You said the girls were playing, but they're scared and crying." Emma Rodriguez's voice, transmitted through Dr. Martinez's communication device from the mobile command center, cut through the tension like a blade. The 3-year-old had insisted on speaking directly to the man who had terrorized her family, showing a courage that stunned every adult present. Carlos's reaction was immediate and visceral. His hand holding the detonator began trembling as he recognized the voice of the child who had been his intended prize, the little girl whose kidnapping was supposed to be the culmination of months of planning. "Impossible," he whispered. "The girl doesn't speak. She's broken." "Emma speaks now," came her voice again, stronger this time. "Emma tells police about the scary man who hurt Abuela Rosa. Emma tells them about the sad girls in the pictures. The police are here to save the girls, Carlos. You can't hurt them anymore." Bruno, the German shepherd, seemed confused by his master's obvious distress. The dog's aggressive posture wavered as Carlos's confidence crumbled, revealing the psychological foundation of their partnership. Agent Santos recognized the moment and seized it. "Carlos, Emma's right. It's over. Your network is finished. We've arrested 14 members of your organization across 3 states. The corruption you depended on, we identified and removed those sources. Your buyers, your transportation network, your safe houses all compromised. The only choice left is whether these children live or die." The tactical team's sniper, positioned in an adjacent building, had maintained perfect sightlines throughout the standoff. When Carlos's attention wavered for just 2 seconds as he processed Emma's words, the precision shot took out the detonator without harming any of the hostages. Simultaneously, a flashbang grenade disoriented Bruno, while tactical agents swarmed Carlos's position. The rescue of the 8 children was both triumphant and heartbreaking. Maria Santos, age 4, had been missing from El Paso for 6 months. Twin brothers Diego and Carlos Jimenez, both 7, had vanished from a Denver playground 8 weeks earlier. Sophia Chun, age 9, had been taken from a school bus stop in Colorado Springs. Each child represented a family's worst nightmare and a community's desperate hope. But it was the reunion between Emma and one of the rescued children that broke every heart present. 10-year-old Isabella Rodriguez Rosas, great-niece who had been visiting from Albuquerque when she disappeared 3 months earlier, had been presumed dead by her family. Emma's testimony had not only saved strangers, she had rescued her own family member. The trial of Carlos Eduardo Mendez began 6 months later in federal court, with security measures typically reserved for terrorism cases. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Patricia Williams, had built an overwhelming case based on Emma's testimony, physical evidence from the compound, and the cooperation of rescued victims who were old enough to testify. The courtroom had been specially modified to accommodate child witnesses, with video testimony capabilities and comfort animals present. When Emma took the stand, now 4 years old and speaking confidently with Dr. Martinez's support, the packed courtroom fell completely silent. "Emma, do you see the man who hurt your Abuela Rosa?" asked Prosecutor Williams gently. Without hesitation, Emma pointed directly at Carlos Mendez. "That's the scary man with the hurt face. He said he was going to take Emma away from her family." The defense attorney's attempts to discredit a 4-year-old's testimony were met with devastating rebuttals. Dr. Martinez explained how children Emma's age often retained incredibly detailed memories of traumatic events, particularly when those memories were processed through proper therapeutic techniques. The physical evidence photographs on Mendez's phone DNA. From the compound, the rescued children's identification corroborated every detail of Emma's account. Most powerful of all was the testimony from the rescued children themselves. Sophia Chun, now 10, described how Mendez had shown them pictures of Emma, calling her the new little sister who would be joining them soon. The psychological manipulation and grooming techniques Emma had described were confirmed by multiple victims, painting a picture of systematic abuse that made even hardened federal agents weep. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Carlos Eduardo Mendez was found guilty on 47 federal charges including child trafficking, kidnapping, racketeering, and conspiracy. Judge Patricia Williams sentenced him to 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never again threaten any child. Mr. Mendez, Judge Williams stated during sentencing, your crimes represent the worst of humanity, the exploitation of innocence for profit. But your conviction represents something far more powerful, the courage of a 3-year-old girl who refused to let fear silence her voice. The broader trafficking network was systematically dismantled. Federal investigations in 12 states resulted in 83 arrests and the rescue of over 200 children. The corruption that had protected Mendez's organization was exposed and prosecuted, with 3 police officers and 2 judicial officials receiving federal prison sentences. Today, Emma Rodriguez is a healthy, vibrant 6-year-old who attends elementary school in a new city where her family relocated for safety. Her grandmother Rosa made a miraculous recovery, defying medical predictions and now serving as Emma's primary caregiver while her parents completed their military service. The bond between grandmother and granddaughter, strengthened by their shared survival, became a symbol of resilience that inspired countless other families. Isabella Rodriguez, the rescued great-niece, now lives with Rosa and Emma, her own recovery, aided by the love and support of family who never stopped searching for her. The 3 generations of Rodriguez women have become advocates for child trafficking awareness, with Emma now speaking 3 languages fluently, serving as the youngest ambassador for victims' rights organizations. Rex, the courthouse German Shepherd, who inadvertently triggered Emma's breakthrough testimony, retired from active duty and now lives with the Rodriguez family. Emma and Rex are inseparable companions, their friendship a daily reminder that courage can transform even the most traumatic experiences into sources of strength and hope. The little girl who once pointed at a police dog and whispered "scary man" had grown into a young advocate whose voice continues, echoing through courtrooms and communities, ensuring that other children's cries for help will never go unheard again.